Hello guys, welcome back to the Field Stories podcast. I'm Nick, and I'm here with these two, Chris Catola and Michaela Corey. I've never said your full name before.
These two. I know you're so nervous about it. I can hear it in your voice. You're like,
I've never said it before.
You did good. You did good.
Where are you?
Corey.
Corey?
It's Corey.
It is Corey, okay.
Yeah, Michaela Corey. There you go, everyone.
That's great.
Now
What are
you
you
know
up
how
to,
to say
Michaela?
it.
What's going on?
We're so well planned and rehearsed. Anyways, I think this is the first time in how many weeks that we've all been in the same location as the week
This is
before,
week 8,
so
isn't it? So
it's crazy. Yeah, I'm still in Germany. You're still in Michigan, Michaela, and Nick, you're still in
always there.
There we
Always.
go. Crazy. So
Great.
yeah, how's everybody doing? Everybody surviving the cold weather and enjoying it?
Yeah,
but
it's
not as cold as Michaela, I'm sure, but
yeah, it's gonna be. I think today it was like negative, I don't know, 14 or something here, and I haven't checked the weather. Again, not doing the conversions we learned from last week.
God,
Can't
no,
do it.
There's no way.
Yeah,
We need to
it's
have
just
a chart like on the screen for
so
you.
embarrassing. I
zone
know. I
chart
need like a
as well.
little.
We need like a
But,
little conversion chart, like centimeters and feet, and also like Celsius, Fahrenheit.
Yeah, time zones, all of that. Yeah.
So American,
So-
so American.
I
I disown
know.
you as a partial Canadian.
I
just
know. I
you
like. I'm
suck.
doing my half Canadian part in injustice right now,
disappointed.
but yeah. Today's my dad's birthday actually, and
Oh,
I'm not
there
gonna
you
say
go.
his age because I don't think he would like that. But we're gonna go and have a nice little party for him this
He's
weekend.
like, he just turned 40 because you just turned 20, right?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
There you go. Hang
Oh,
on.
I like
Perfect.
being 20.
Awesome.
I'll
There
be
you go.
20.
Um,
But yeah.
That's awesome. Well, happy birthday, Dad. Happy
Yeah,
birthday, Dad.
happy
I don't know his
birthday,
first
Dr.
name. So
Corey.
there you
The
go.
Corey.
Mr. Corey. Yeah, that's awesome. Well, today we have Nick's first guest because it's the first time Nick has brought a guest on. So yeah, there's no pressure, Nick, but don't screw it up. That's
Yeah,
basically what I
I'm
would
pretty
say.
confident in this one. I'm pretty confident in this one.
Yeah. So
So,
why don't you go ahead and tell us how you managed to convince this friend of yours to be on the show and how you know him.
Yeah, so Jonah is he's one of my good friends. He's actually my captain of the six-a-side football team we play for. He's also on my course the year above. I remember, we just met through various different sports and university, and we get on a lot. We've been on several good nights out, drinking quite a lot, so we're good friends.
Sounds about right.
But we're gonna put all of that banter aside to get to a professional thing today because he's got an extremely good story to tell and a very emotional, passionate. Basically, just project what he's doing in. He's out in. I get it horribly wrong every time. He is out in Bali at the moment, and
And where is that in the world? No.
yeah,
Where is Bali?
somewhere not in Europe. It's no, it's in Indonesia, and he's having a blast, and he's doing really good work. But I won't do too much on that because we do handle that in the introduction. But yeah, Chris, what are you up to? What have you been doing?
Oh, I'm still in Germany, still doing meetings, planning the rest of the year, and all of our just working with one NGO and another NGO, and so super busy as always, but it's okay. It's all productive, and just excited to meet Jonah and see what he has to say about Borneo. Still haven't been to Asia myself, so one day, I'm excited to hear what he has to say.
Yeah, we're all looking to go there, aren't we? I think Michaela, you've been, haven't you?
I've been to Bali. I haven't been to Borneo. That's on my bucket list. So maybe one day we can all just go together.
Yeah, should we just all
And-
go? Let's just do it.
Yeah.
I would love to. We should plan a trip and just go. It would be a
Okay.
fantastic
That sounds
time.
easy. It's hard enough to get us all on a Zoom call across the.
Yeah.
We can do it. Just have faith. Be
I have
Yeah.
lots of faith. The fact that this podcast's still running means I have lots of faith in us.
There you go. We can do it. Let's go next.
I think
year.
this might be the most. Let's see. This could be the most technically successful podcast
Yeah,
episode.
Other than the beforehand, but actually during, 100%. It's all there. So no seamless editing from me today. It's all actually done in person as it is. So can't wait.
All right. Well, let's go for it. Let's go ahead and bring Jonah on then.
Let's do it. Thank you, guys.
Woohoo!
Okay, hello guys, and welcome back to this week's installment of Technical Shambles. We have Jonah from, he's from I was going to say he's from Borneo, but he's not from Borneo. That's where he is. It is right, isn't it? Because you said Bali just now, and I'm really confused whether you actually are.
So
Where are you?
I'm in Indonesia, in
Yeah.
Bali, in Indonesia.
Oh, amazing, amazing. So Jonah is a wildlife photographer and filmmaker. He's 21 and he's on the same course as me, and we're good friends. So we're going to have a little chat today. And I just want you to introduce yourself and talk about what you do and all the cool things you're up to. All right.
Awesome. Yeah. So thank you for the kind introduction. Nice to meet you all. So I'm a wildlife photographer and filmmaker. I started out as mainly focusing on wildlife. And wildlife photography really, and sort of as I progressed and sort of travelled more and learnt more about what I wanted to do, I sort of more switched my focus to wanting to become a wildlife filmmaker, and then that sort of progressed to be sort of conservation based instead of your just typical blue chip sort of wildlife films, to create sort of films that have a purpose of telling stories of truthful things like illegal pet trade around the world, all sort of things like that, down to even just good stories of people doing good things in nature and with wildlife.
Sounds great. Yeah.
Cool. So yeah, Jonah, I mean, I think we all have a lot of questions for sure. I guess the first thing to start off with is just, yeah, I mean, you're in Borneo, you're in Bali, we think, Nick? Is that Nick?
I don't know anymore.
Bali's not in Borneo.
Indonesia is just one giant island anyways. It's small and easy to find. No worries, right? You can walk around. Yeah. Anyways, yeah. So you're there. Yeah, I mean, if you want to just give us, obviously, and also our listeners a little more background on, exactly where you are. And I know as far as I know, you just arrived within a week. So yeah, if you could just go ahead and give us some background on where you are and what your plans are in the next few days, and then I think we have a lot of follow-up questions from there.
Yeah, so I'm currently in Bali in Indonesia. I've been in Indonesia now for just over a week. I started in Jakarta, which was just my destination to fly into, as it's good for international connections with flights. I then hopped over to Surabaya, which is on the same island, which is Java, where I spent 3 days filming in the so-called world's worst zoo, or the Zoo of Death, documenting the different things that go on there and the problems with it. And then I'm now in Bali for 10 days, where I'm filming up and down Bali at different wildlife parks, wildlife sanctuaries, places like that. And then from here I go to Sumatra, where I will be filming orangutans and other wildlife out in the wild, all part of a film for my third year project in university, which looks at problems with the wildlife entertainment industry, and then the knock-on causes it has for wildlife sanctuaries that then have to take in animals from these zoos or entertainment parks that have been mistreated and have been sort of taught to behave certain ways, and also looking at animals, especially orangutans in the wild, and showing the orangutans with freedom as opposed to ones that are stuck in these sort of horrible zoos and entertainment parks.
Yeah, great.
And yeah, that's really interesting. So, Jonah, you did mention that you had, I don't know if you have experience in the pet trade or filming the pet trade or are knowledgeable about that, but as someone who works with animals, especially endangered species that are highly desirable in the pet trade, what have you seen? What are the most desirable animals that are being heavily exploited right now? Have you, gone to places where you've been able to capture some of this footage, and what have you learned from these experiences?
Yeah, so just today I was at Bali Rescue Centre, which is one of the wildlife sanctuaries on the island of Bali, one of the only ones really, that mainly focuses on animals that have previously been in the pet trade, whether they've been confiscated in between being taken from the wild and going to their pet destination, or as being confiscated as being an actual pet. In terms of animals that are sort of highly trafficked that I've seen, lots of primates are quite desirable out here in Indonesia and Asia, things like macaques, even orangutans are very desirable, and that leads to problems, especially with orangutans. Is they're really cute and cuddly when they're little and easy to manage, and then they sort of grow and become ridiculously strong and huge, and then people realise that they can't really look after them. So then that becomes a problem for sanctuaries then, as well as other species like snakes are very highly desirable over here, as well as many birds. Birds are seen again as a very prized possession out here in Asia. Many households have them as pets, and they're often used as a sign of wealth out here, or as a sign of stature. If you have maybe a very endangered or very colourful bird in a cage in your house, that's a sign of stature out here. So again, they're the sort of the problems and the animals that I see that really struggle.
Yeah, oh man, it's so true, isn't it? There's so much going on. Well, I actually obviously we hang out quite a lot and we're good friends, so I've seen the video of you. Did you guys catch that? Okay, everyone disappeared.
No.
Okay, I'll start again. We're all back. So obviously, we're good friends. So I see your work on your Instagram, and I actually saw the videos the other day of the world's worst zoo. I'm not sure who's quoting that and saying it is, but you put some videos up, just like little stories, and yeah, it was quite shocking, to be honest. I did not enjoy watching that at all, but it's really good to sort of be aware of that. I don't know how much you can talk about it. I don't know how much you're willing to, but if you could just give a little bit more details on what was going on, what were you seeing, like these sort of horrible instances?
Yeah,
Yes.
I'm interested.
So I first, while doing research to make this project and to come out and film, I knew sort of entertainment parks was where I was going to start with the whole idea, to really get an idea of the true scale of the problem. And that's where I came across this Zoo of Death, as it's called by tourists and media outlets and whatever. And it's as a whole, the zoo it's a very large zoo. I think something like nearly 3,000 individual animals and a vast array of different and really sort of unique species, some of which I've never ever even seen before in zoos. But that's about the only good things I can say about the place. There's problems with litter in a lot of the enclosures. A lot of the enclosures are sort of crumbling. Overcrowding was a really big problem. I saw and filmed many guests throwing food into the animal enclosures, which again is a problem, because zoos are supposed to be a place that educate especially young people, and to maybe inspire them to love and care for animals. And you're seeing adults throwing food into enclosures and at animals really sort of painted the wrong message for me. The zoo also offers the ability or the option, to pay to ride the elephants and camels at the zoo, which again I think spreads a really sort of bad message on the whole tourism industry and how we should be treating animals in zoos anyway. Another problem I came across was many of the animals were showing very stereotypical behaviours, especially the sun bears I noticed it in, which shows a sort of, means a lack of care is given, a lack of enrichment. It means they're getting very bored very easily, and they're resorting to these stereotypical behaviours as well. And finally, the last sort of major problem I discovered at the zoo was there was a fair few proboscis monkeys. I don't know if you guys have come across them before. They're a very funny-looking primate species, only found on the island or endemic to the island of Borneo. This zoo was in Java. However, there was a fair few proboscis monkeys that weren't actually in an enclosure. They managed to escape and were up a tree. Could quite easily sort of come out the tree and go for a stroll and leave the area, which again for an endangered species of primate, being out of their enclosure in an island that they're not native to, is a real big problem. And when mentioned to the keepers, they just sort of shrugged it off as if it was normal, which again is quite a worrying sign.
Yeah, that's crazy. Oh, what about the Oh, sorry, Chris. I was just last thing on this one. There's that video of the otter that was almost in a circus, and what was that about? I just saw it basically doing tricks. It was crazy.
Yeah, so they had this. It was in fact. Let me try the name. It was called the show. It was a show they put on that you pay inside the park. I think it was about £1 maybe to go and watch this show, and it's actually called an animal education show, which I found rather quite amusing as it was anything but educational. There was pelicans, otters, hornbills, and birds of prey were essentially brought out, made to do a few tricks. They even got the crowd involved. Sort of for the hornbills, they were holding up these sort of hoops that the hornbill was made to fly through. It was advertised as an educational show. I'm not entirely sure what was educational about it, other than learning the name of the species. It was mainly just an entertainment show put on to show that they can train the animals to do these things. It was very distasteful and quite a tough watch from someone that was there from my perspective.
Yeah, that doesn't sound very good. I think the key thing you've made out of that is there's just sounds like no educational value whatsoever, and it sounds very old-fashioned 1950s, 20s, whatever, early 20th century zoo behavior. And yeah, it's frustrating as someone who spent a lot of time working in that field of environmental education. To hear that still occurring, it doesn't surprise me, but it's definitely frustrating. Obviously, what you're doing is good. Objectively, subjectively, from our perspective, it's good, but also from their perspective, it's not good, right, for them. So I'm really curious from your perspective, what resistance, how are you doing it? Is it dangerous? Like, what's that like for you? Because I can't imagine they love someone with a camera filming that and then talking about it, even though it's good that you're doing it.
Great question.
It's a very good, and it's something that I've had to put a lot of thought into while coming here and bringing sort of quite expensive camera kit into these sort of places. That it's not filmed on some small little phone; it's filmed on quite big cameras. That's quite glaringly obvious. It's sort of one of those that, as it's a zoo and it's full of tourists. Although Surabaya Zoo was mostly full of native tourists, it's still, I could still almost pass it off as I was a tourist, and it's sort of you have to just blend in and fit in and try and play the role of the unaware tourist and just go along with what's going on. Go and watch the shows, walk around the park and just film as if I'm filming for my own sort of, maybe as like a vlogger or filming for my YouTube channel or something like that. But it's definitely something that I was definitely aware of, and it's been in the back of my mind to make sure that I'm not being watched or something like that.
Yeah. I'm sure that must be nerve-wracking too, but what you are doing, obviously, Chris said from our perspective, is a really good thing. But what I'm curious about is, especially with zoos like this in countries where it's a pretty common theme, where you have a lot of zoos that are just more for a business aspect, or for a, here's a picture and you go on your way for more of an aesthetic value. With your videos and your educational outreach, have you seen any fruitful success with a lot of, native tourists in those areas? And have you been able to successfully educate those people who just have never seen anything outside of that?
No.
Yeah, that's the really sort of difficult thing. Is it's coming from the Western world to a completely different country, to a completely different culture. Where
right.
and that's there's the zoo was absolutely full of locals that bring their kids and clearly love the place, and it's a place that they can come to and enjoy with their family, and it's really difficult to put into perspective, and it was really difficult to understand, because although I feel one way about it, this is completely normal for them, and this is a completely normal thing, and it's all throughout Asia really, and it's just something I think we have to work on, and I think it comes from a little bit of education, and again, it's something we can all use to try and show, because maybe they just don't understand that what they're doing isn't maybe quite right. It's really difficult to say and to put into words really.
No, I totally understand. My brother lives in China, and I got to visit him. He's been living there the last 20 years, and so I visited him, and we went to a zoo. And what I saw, and what he told me is more of an educational standing, is that, you know, China was shut off from the world for a long time, and then when they reopened, it was like they're catching up to those social norms. And so with their cultural background plus meshing in with the Western world, when they went to zoos, it was more about the aesthetics. You had people who didn't really know about the conservation because they were not open to that. It was all closed off. And as we have grown, in, you know, at least in the United States and Canada and other countries with conservation, I feel some other countries are lagging behind because of that, especially being cut off from the world in the 50s. So I totally understand that. It's you don't want to input your white social norm or your cultural norm and put that on a different culture, because they have their ways. So how do you integrate conservation in a positive way that is not disturbing their own cultural practices or what they know as well?
Definitely,
So
and yeah, you've hit the nail on the head. That's sort of exactly how I feel. It's you know, it's such an amazing place in the world, and it's with such an amazing culture, and to come, you know, I don't want to come in and invade that and sort of, this is how we should do it. This, you know, they have their own way, and there's so many people that I've met out here that that do understand and that do want to do nothing but good for the wildlife. And I think it's just one of those things that I think it'll just take time, and it'll just be something that gradually becomes more and more understood.
Yeah, for
absolutely.
sure. I think leading off of the back of that, I'm really interested because obviously you've been into Indonesia 5 times now. What are some of the positive conservation stories you've seen, or some of the good things? Because obviously we're really curious not to paint obviously the continent country, as in a negative light. We want to sort of suggest that obviously there's a lot of positivity as well. What could you give us a light on maybe a couple things that you've noticed that you're like, yeah, okay, that's amazing?
Yeah, so I mean, I absolutely love the country. It's my favourite country on earth for many reasons. You know, everyone's so happy here, so accepting. You know, it's got amazing weather, food, culture, you name it. The country's got it. And one of the most amazing things about the country is its luck in terms of its wildlife and nature. It's got so many islands teeming with life. You know, there's so many species that can only be found in Indonesia. Orangutans, proboscis monkeys, just to name a few. Not only that, they've got incredible marine life with some incredible reefs, incredible dive sites. But with all that does come the problem with obviously the illegal pet trades, and the sort of bad side of the tourism. But then also comes, you know, the amazing sanctuaries and the amazing charities that come out of the country. There's some amazing orangutan charities out here. Borneo Orangutan Survival Foundation is one that I work closely with and work with them quite a lot. And they're amazing. They've got many bases throughout Borneo. There's many sun bear sanctuaries and charities, you know, hornbill charities. There's so many people looking to do good, and there's so many people that want to go into this line of work. There's just a young lady that I met today, who I won't name it. She works at the Bali Wildlife Sanctuary. She studied something completely different in school, and worked at a mining company, which are known back in Borneo, which are known for not being great for the environment. shall we say. However, she realised that's not something she wanted to do, and she turned and she now works for the Bali Wildlife Foundation and wants to go back to Borneo one day, and maybe do her own NGO and open her own sanctuary. So there's so much good here, and there's so many great stories out here.
Yeah, that's awesome.
There you go. Yeah, no, that's great. It's a great way to sort of close the book on that. And yeah, that's fantastic to hear that. And I think that's a theme you find all over the world, right? I mean, whenever there's bad things happening superficially, once you get into the country and you get on the ground and you meet people, you realize that we're all really not that different, and most of us do want the same things for ourselves and even for our environment. It's just finding ways to make that happen. That's the challenge, right? I want to bring it back to you a little bit, and your life a bit, which I know is scary to talk about when you're 21. It's scary to talk about when you're my age too. But the last few, it's always scary. But yeah, the last few episodes we've had, it just happens to be that we've had some guests, Gail and Dana, and we kind of talked about, especially with Gail, but Dana a bit as well, about just the challenges being in conservation, and the sacrifices and the decisions, and the life. And I mean, obviously, for wildlife filmmaking is slightly different because it's not like the everyday projects. You don't necessarily have the analysis of your R script working and all that stress, but there's a whole bunch of other stresses because you have to figure out how you get content, and is my content going to be popular? In science, we just have to have results that make sense, and then we put it out there, and it is what it is. But in media, it has to also be good, but then people have to like it, and you have to this. So there's a whole group of stresses that you have in wildlife conservation that you don't really have in science, but they're similar. So yeah, I'm just curious, from your perspective as someone who's young and getting into this field, how do you feel about it? How do you feel about your future, and what are the things that would stress you out? Not to bring it up negatively, but I'm curious about your perspective as someone who's entering into this.
Killer question.
Definitely. I think one of the main things that always sort of sits in the back of my head when I think about the future, once I graduate uni in 5 months, God, that's a scary statement, is sort of, where I go from there is, I've always wanted to work abroad, and my area of speciality, I've always wanted to be Asia. So then straight away that comes with the challenge of, okay, well then do I move out here? And if I find the answer to that question is yes, and then it's, well, how do I make that possible financially? I can't just up sticks and move with no job. I'd have to find a way of making money to sustain, to be able to live out here. And also it's all well and good making a film for university on a small little budget, but then I've got to go out into the real world, and I'm using some fantastic kit that the uni course lends me that otherwise I financially wouldn't be able to be used. So I think financially financially is definitely something I think about a lot, and also where I would be able to go with it. Whether I work for a company, or whether I try and maybe join forces with a couple of other filmmakers, and make sort of different passion projects, but then that becomes another difficulty with how do you finance it. So I think that's the main one is the financial side of it, and how to make the films I want to make feasible.
Yeah.
I think we can all relate to that.
Right? Yeah.
Yep.
We've talked about it before, haven't we? I think even in the last podcast we were talking about that. There's so many routes and there's so many options. It's just you could do anything, but also nothing. I mean, there's especially when you're saying it, you made a great point about the financial aspect of it, man. Because just like getting access to places that are important for filming, even that's going to cost. That costs, right? And then getting there, and then the film gear. I mean, it's ridiculous how expensive some of the gear is we used. I mean, I hired out a £15,000 lens the other day. I mean, that's insane.
The other challenge too is I don't know. I'm not sorry to keep build on it, but we've got a few seconds. I feel like it's a weird conundrum in a way. I said this to someone the other day. I was like, if everything that we wanted as conservationists happened, then all of us would have no jobs. And also then from your perspective, for you, Nick, and you, Jonah, it's weird because your audience that you want, the more they engage they become, the more they want to do what you do, which then means there's more content, which means it's harder for you to actually have a career. So it's really difficult. Like, it's such a hard thing. And of course, you know, when we enter into conservation, whatever type it is, whether it's research or filmmaking, media, you know, we're in this for the passion of it, right? Not the money, but we still need to live. So, yeah, I mean, all I would say to you, Jonah, and you, Nick, and anyone, doesn't matter, is you're not alone. You know, we struggle with these things all the time. So anyone listening, don't be hard on yourself for struggling some days, because it's not an easy route. But we're in it because we love it, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Oh, that's great. Well, Jonah, that was awesome. Thanks a lot for giving us all that information. Again, it's like we say this with all the guests. We have so many questions. We could carry on forever. But I feel like you've mentioned orangutans a few times. I feel like we may just have a story around orangutans. Could you please give us one of your field stories, please?
We do, and I can't promise it's the happiest story, but it does have, I feel, a very important message, and it's one that I feel people should learn. So I'll just take a...
Yeah, take your time. You're preparing all day for that.
Do we need to get a tissue for this?
Yeah.
I do have it written up in front of me, so I will be reading it, just as it is from Boss Foundation, a company and a charity, should I say, that I have very fond a very fond attachment to. So I want to make sure that it is all factually correct.
So could you tell us who the Boss Foundation is? Sorry, please, just quickly,
so
just
Boss
so everyone
Foundation, or Borneo Orangutan Survival Foundation, is a orangutan charity based out of Borneo. Who they have two sites, one called Samboja Lestari, one called Nuramenteng. They also have multiple release sites all throughout Borneo, and essentially they're two sanctuary sites. They take in orangutans from all walks of life, from the pet trade, from zoos, circuses, even injured ones from the wild. They take them all in. They have hundreds across both sites, and they've released hundreds in their time.
Okay.
And so this particular story is of two orangutans who sort of lives started in a similar way and then intertwined later on. So the first orangutan I'll touch on is a male called Shelton. Now, when Shelton was a 6-year-old juvenile orangutan, young orangutan, while he was out in the wild, he strayed into a village in search of food. Now, this is most likely down to the large deforestation problem due to palm oil mining that they have in Borneo. And so he went into a village in search of food. However, as he got into the village and started scavenging for food, he was beaten multiple times and then shot and left for dead. However, he was discovered by some Good Samaritans, who then handed him over to Boss Foundation, who immediately operated on him and saved his life. But due to the physical and psychological trauma he went through, Shelton really sort of struggled with trusting humans again, and it took the Samboja team quite some time to really sort of gain his trust, really. And from there on, he then joined what they call Jungle School. Some of you guys or the viewers may be aware of Orangutan Jungle School, a TV show that is it was on in the UK. I'm not sure if it's on worldwide. About the Boss Foundation who run the Jungle School, which is where they teach young orangutans all the really important life lessons that they need to possibly be released back to the wild. Anything from how to climb all the way to what's the dangers of snakes, where they throw plastic snakes at them and watch them all run away scared. So that's where his story stops for now. So then we meet Corporal. An orangutan I was very lucky to spend a lot of time with a couple of years back while visiting Cambodia. Now, Corporal, when he was young, was stolen from the wild. Most likely, his mother was killed, and Corporal was taken to be sold into the pet trade, where he was kept as a pet for quite a few years in a very small sort of dog cage. One day, Corporal escaped this cage, got out into the village and climbed a telephone pole. And as he reached the top, he was very badly electrocuted. He fell from the telegraph pole and was discovered a while later by his owners. The owners believed that the severe condition he was in, he was just going to die, so they brought him back to their house, put him back in the cage, and essentially left him there to die. However, quite a few days later, he still hadn't succumbed to the injuries. So the owners, or whatever you want to call them, handed Corporal over to Boss Foundation, who immediately had to operate and amputate both of Corporal's arms. He miraculously managed to survive and again joined jungle school. Now, by the time he joined jungle school, Shelton was still incredibly shy. Shelton was unfortunately blind by this point. However, once Corporal was introduced to jungle school, they both formed an unbreakable bond. They couldn't be separated, and even though Shelton wasn't allowed out of his cage, Corporal always was allowed inside to sort of keep him company. Now, Shelton wasn't allowed out of his cage due to the fact he was blind and it just wasn't safe for him, whereas Corporal, despite the lack of arms, was still allowed to participate in jungle school for some time until he became too big. Both Corporal and Shelton were given their own sort of what they call it, Boss, their own private islands, which for the unreleasable orangutans are man-made sort of wild islands that the unreleasable orangutans get placed on. And so both Shelton and Corporal were placed on separate islands. As they got older, males typically can't be kept together due to they're very highly territorial, and they just didn't want any sort of fighting. So they were placed on their own islands. Unfortunately, a couple of years before I visited Samboja Story, Boss Foundation lost Shelton. However, Corporal is still living. He's now, I think he's in his mid-20s, and he's really quite incredible. He's learnt to climb using just his feet.
Wow.
He eats using his feet. He
That's
rolls
actually-
around his island doing roly-poly, and he actually now lives with a female called Leslie on his island, who he's often seen sat on his bench looking at the view with her, which is really quite an incredible shot of them two sort of sat on the bench. So that's sort of my wildlife story. It's a sad one, but one that I think has sort of hope and shows that those, despite the two horrific and sort of trauma experiences they both went through, they still sort of pushed themselves through and despite everything, really learned to live. And it's full credit to the team at Samboja Story for giving them that second chance and making that available to them.
Wow, Jonah, that was amazing. Thank you. That was a first as well. We've not had actual tears on the podcast yet. Not when it's been recording, anyway.
I know, I
That
couldn't
was
help it.
that's brilliant.
I mean, I
Thank you
think
so
it's
much.
also a really cool story because I think within that story, it's one of the great things about trying to portray the stories that we want to share on the podcast is that, a lot of times they're funny or crazy or, they get a laugh, but this is great that you gave this perspective on the stories because the whole idea is summarizing what the life is like for wildlife, but also conservationists in one story. And what I get out of that is is you see the challenges that orangutans face individually. And the fact that you said that probably, the one of them had their parents killed, yeah, I've seen that firsthand in Peru. It happens all the time, unfortunately. A lot of the monkeys and primates in the pet trade come from that. And then, so you see that challenge from conservation, and then you see, whether it's ignorance or whatever it is, you see people who purchase these pets and don't give them the care they desire. And it doesn't mean they're evil necessarily, but it's not a good thing that they're doing with those animals, I think we can agree on. But then you see the positive side of humanity, that those people trying to put so much effort in to save them. So I think that story, it's great. I mean, fantastic, and it really summarizes everything about how complicated it is, and the good and the bad, and the touching.
Absolutely.
So that was great. Thank you.
No problem.
I think I need a good cry a little bit after this when we're off the air.
That was great.
It's so terrible.
Also,
I mean, it's really nice.
Carry on, please.
Oh, yeah. No, it's okay. I was just saying it's really nice because, you're touching a lot of hearts of people who really care and are so passionate about conservation. And for people who are even not in this field and they hear these stories and they realize, what humanity does to wildlife. And like you said, Chris, even if it's with, not with malice, it still is so heartbreaking on what we can do and how we can destroy wildlife, whether it's quote unquote cuddly or a reptile or, something with feathers. It still all matters. And the people who are in this field for a reason are passionate because we want to conserve and sustain, all these individuals the best we can. And so it's so beautiful to hear, people truly make that effort, despite how sad the circumstances can be. And it's just, man, that I'm going to probably cry a lot later. I'm trying really hard not to right now. I don't know why. That really just triggered something in me, but it was beautiful.
It was great.
Yeah, I think that's the sort of, it's ultimately majority of the problems wildlife face nowadays is human related or human caused, but also we are the only ones that can make the difference. Really, we're the ones that can also make a change. We can use our intelligence and be able to help them as well. And there are so many good stories of people rectifying other people's mistakes and changing animals' lives, really.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, wow. Yeah. Well, a couple of housekeeping things, Jonah. That was brilliant. First of all, that was a great story, amazing. Also, big thanks to Jonah, who is now up at midnight where you are. It's incredible. Yeah, fair play to you. Yeah. Thank you. Midnight. It's midnight then. What 10 a.m. where you are, Michaela? It's crazy. We've got multiple times.
It's 11 a.m.
4 time zones again.
Crazy. That's a whole 13 hours. Isn't brilliant.
Chris, are you in South America?
No, I'm in Germany. I'll be in South America in 2 weeks. So
we've got 3 different continents at the moment on the call.
Yeah. We could have had 4. I'm sorry. We could have had 4. Next time.
We nearly had 4.
We'll have to do it again when you're there again, man. That's the only option.
That's good. But also, Jonah, you have those videos on your Instagram as well of the corporal doing the rolling and the jungle score. Amazing videos. I could not recommend them enough. So we will do everything we can to share that on our Instagram and our YouTube page. We'll get that up onto the Field Stories podcast when we're releasing this. And thank you so much for that. That was great. So any other closing thoughts?
No, I think we're good. I think that was awesome. Thank you so much again, Jonah, for staying up late, and hopefully you don't have to get up too early tomorrow morning.
Commitment to the cause.
Yeah, so for sure, man, it was great, and hopefully we'll have you on again. And I mean, hopefully if you can tolerate Nick long enough, then we'll actually you'll be able to meet the two of you at some point together. Who knows?
Yeah, I reckon we can make that happen. We play 6-a-side together, so even if it's after that. No, that was awesome. Thank you so much. But we'll probably sign out from there. But enjoy the rest of your time in Bali, Borneo, wherever you are. It doesn't matter.
Thank you.
No, that was great. Thanks a lot, man.
Yeah, so that was awesome, Nick. Great job on that. You so far you're 1 for 1 on your guess. That's good.
Ooh.
Yeah, and I would say you win the prize of the first person to make Michaela cry. So that's awesome. Well, he does, but
That's hard to do.
Jonah wins
so, yeah.
that. To be
Yeah, she's
fair. We'll
pretty
give it
she's
credit.
pretty
Jonah
cold
does
and
win
heartless, as we know. So getting that emotion
As a
from her,
reptile.
pretty, yeah.
Yeah. No, it really is. I don't cry often, so.
I mean, he
Amazing.
did it. It usually is going to be something animal related or wildlife related. Same for me. So yeah,
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was
honestly.
great.
I know.
That was great. Yeah, and I thought it was I mean, this is a very complicated subject, which I think we might have one or two guests on in the future about zoos, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Yep.
That's a bigger topic for this outro. But what I would say is, the positive thing that I try to take out of it when he was talking about those zoos isn't really the zoo quality or the lives for those animals, because that's pretty tragic, obviously. But I was encouraged when he described how much people enjoyed being there and how many people were there and how many people wanted to see the wildlife. And it just feels like it shows me that people care about wildlife and they want to learn about it. And it feels like such a missed opportunity. Like, to me, the big thing that came through that he was saying is that there's just no education. It's just a show,
Yeah.
And it's a shame that, the key to wildlife education to me is like taking that interest, that spark, and building on it. And it just sounds like such a wasted opportunity. So hopefully through work of him, and other people like him, we can start to continue to change the narrative across the world, but especially in places like Asia, where it's kind of behind the more modern take on zoos.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
what I really like about what Jonah's doing is, obviously I have a little bit more insight following him, is he showed those videos I mentioned in the podcast of the animals being treated pretty horrendously and in horrible, horrible conditions. I mean, these turtles were crammed in with litter everywhere, but he wasn't saying, he just showing it. He wasn't like, okay, these guys are villains, they're evil, it's horrifying. It's not
Right.
like we need to get, you know what I mean? It's that it's just the knowledge and the education, and I think the biggest thing is we want to get that across to those organizations as well, because like you said, missed opportunity 100%.
Yeah, I mean,
lots of scope there.
I think, sorry, I don't mean to hog it, Michaela, but no, I think
You're
that
okay.
I think there's so much nuance that's lost in so many subjects across the world. Everything's black and white these days, and the more media it gets bigger, the more people compete for views and attention. It's all about extremism and black and white topics, and it's not like that. When you work in conservation on the ground, you realize so much of it is not black and white. It's so complicated, and I really respect him, and I know you, Nick. We've talked about it, and any filmmakers, young or old, who try to be objective and try to be have that nuance in the story they're telling. That's really good, and it's really responsible. So I'm really glad to hear and see there's people like him and you, Nick, out there.
Great.
Yeah, and as you're saying, Chris, you worked in the zoo field and the education field. My last job was at a zoo in the conservation department, and zoos have such a very controversial kind of opinion with many different people, and I think what's really important and what we have to stress on is the education. If we're going to have animals, behind in holding places where we need to educate the people about them, where they're from, why, how we're conserving them, and we need to have conservation initiatives that are going with, showing the public why we are, saving these animals. And I think that it's really important that we don't paint people in different countries who do have these zoos in a horribly negative light, where we say, oh, they're horrible people, because oftentimes they're not. It's just they don't know any better. They're trying to make a living. They are in their minds maybe educating people, but we together as conservationists need to educate the best we can and improve those animals' lives. And so I think he did a fantastic job in shedding light on that subject. But it's a tough topic to converse about in general, because there's so many different opinions, and no one is going to have the right thing to say all the time about it. But I think sometimes less words said and just showing the reality is sometimes better. Is just going, this is what's happening, and this is how do we change this as individuals, and how do we also another thing we talked about is bridge that cultural barrier between the Western and Eastern world, where some people are a little bit less behind in those cultural norms and or conservational I don't know. I'm trying to. I'm kind of everywhere right now, but yeah. Overall, it was a fantastic job. So.
Yeah, I think it's
Great.
a
Really
perfect
cool.
way to sort of end this episode. It's again, it's quite a decent length one. There was no need. We didn't want to stop at any point. We had more questions. We had the story was just incredible. There was no way we were stopping that, So I think a great episode and something that I think we can sign out on now and just say like it's nice to have the alternative opinion, like you said, Chris, where some stories are crazy funny and then this one's heartwarming. It's making people cry literally, so it's nice. So it was very enjoyable. I had an absolute blast for this one. It was maybe for a different reason. It wasn't all jokes and laughter, but it's knowledgeable, it's informative, and I think it's a great way to finish off. So yeah, I think
that was great, guys. That was an awesome guest, Nick, and really excited and. Just excited for whatever and whoever our guest is next week.
Yeah, that's the thing. We can't wait for it. I think
I'm excited.
it will be like, comment, and subscribe. We actually want to hear from you guys as well. The comment section, just get involved. Just tell us what you're thinking. If you got any cool stories yourself, we just want to hear them. We just like the whole stories aspect of it. That's why we're here, right? So anything to get involved would be great.
And what you want to hear from us too, any subjects you want us to touch on, any questions you have about our co-hosts, about our guests that we can answer that we didn't in our podcast. So we'd love to hear
guests
from y'all.
as well, right? Anyone who has a cool story themselves, let's get them on, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Perfect, right?
Cool,
Thanks, guys. We'll see you soon.